Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. So lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And good to see a good crowd here tonight. I wonder why. Well, tonight's discussion will include two guests, Colonel Wynand du Toit, formerly of Suidlanders, and Colleen Serfontein, also known as Skidmarks. But first, I always get asked what happened to Loving Life with nearly 110,000 subscribers on YouTube. So let me tell you, by experience, I've learned that it is impossible to discuss the most important topical events happening in South Africa and the world today on YouTube. Loving Life has already had 4 channels removed during COVID by YouTube through community strikes and allegations of medical misinformation, which, strangely enough, turned to be true. That is why I established our own Loving Life TV platform. Here we can discuss any topical issues openly and without any concern of being censored. Our platform has a huge, growing and informative South Africa-centered forum managed by Nat Quinn. Daily videos on topical issues on South Africa and globally, many co-presenters, as well as featured videos, a daily email with links to all new forum and videos published each day, which is sent to all registered subscribers on the platform. Loving Life TV is the most comprehensive alternative news platform on South African news and views, and it costs nothing to join. You can register on https, or I'll get one of the moderators to put the address in the side chat, but it's lovinglifetv.com. You can Google that as well. All right, now this week, upcoming live streams on Loving Life TV. Tomorrow, the growing global child kidnapping and trafficking cartels. Wednesday, Dr. Ivan Jardine on the COVID scandal. Thursday, Col Wynand, a flight expert on the Warsaw fiasco involving Ramaphosa's security detail. And Friday, discussions with people from Ugu in KwaZulu-Natal about their water issues. Now, tonight's live stream is largely about the implosion taking place at Suidlanders, although we will also be talking about topical issues in South Africa. Joining us is a former senior member of Suidlanders, Col Wynand du Toit, and critical thinker Col Serfontein, also known as Skid Marks. Now, just to let you know, I did contact Simon Roche a couple of days ago and offered to let him join in tonight's discussion. And this was the audio response that I got from Simon Roche. Here we go. Let's listen to that.
Scott, I've only got your message now, and tomorrow is Monday the 26th. It's very, very short notice for such a big thing, you know. I don't even know if I want to get entangled in a fight with that fool. Oh, heavens above. Let me give it some thought, Scott. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If I don't get back to you soon enough, well, then, you know, it didn't work out.
Okay, so that's the response I got from Simon Roche, and obviously he's decided not to join us tonight. Now, let me get our guests on. Here we go. Okay, I'll get Col Wynand du Toit on first, then I'll get Col on. Here we go. Hi, Wynand.
Scott, kan je mij zien?
I can see you and I can hear you. How are you?
Excellent. No, I'm fine. Great to talk to you again. And yeah, it's winter time around here. Of course, they're at your side as well, né?
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. I'm going to get the other guest on. Won't be a second, and then we'll get started. Okay.
Are your equipment secured or insured?
Yes, it'll be fine. Here we go. I'm bringing Col Serfontein into the discussion now. So it's cold over there, Wynand?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes, Scott.
Hi, Col. Col, meet Wynand. Wynand, meet Col.
Yeah, hello, Colleen, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you, Wynand. And you?
As you can see, still smiling, so not a problem.
All right, guys, I'm going to
do.
get straight into this discussion, and I'm going to address the question to Wynand first, and then I'm going to ask Col if he's got something he would like to raise with Wynand about that question, or any thoughts that he has regarding that particular point. Wynand, the conflict between Suidlanders and Suidland Defence, which led to the establishment of Suidland Civil Protection, is something everybody is talking about. What is going on?
Yeah, it is actually very simple. There was no conflict. There was no reason for a breakup as far as we are concerned. Everything was smooth and calm, and I received a call from Gustav where he requested us to meet in Douglas, but we must meet alone, just him and me. So I drove there, and we sat down, and he told me that, well, he got confirmation under the tree. And that tree refers to the tree where he makes his decisions, because that is what Roger Thiel told him. He must go and sit under the tree, and then he will receive the messages from above or the inspiration, or what you want to call it. And he is now certain that our ways must split. We must become two companies, separate from each other. But you must just remember and bear in mind, we have always been separate. They have developed their things and we have developed our things. Suidland civilians were under Gustav's control and Suidland defense was under my control. And so the breakup came as a hell of a shock to me, and he said there, when we met, he said that, well, everything can continue as it is in regards with, for example, the finances. They will continue to pay everything until we are financially sound. And once we are financially sound, we can bring over the debit orders and everything that goes with it. But that wasn't my big concern. I drove back and I was in shock for 2 days. I didn't spoke to anybody, and only the next day, that evening, I actually informed my senior officers during a Zoom meeting about the decision which Gustav had made. And everybody, and we were 27 guys on that Zoom meeting, and everybody was shocked. And then, while they were staring at me, I was looking at each and every face. I can see how this news manifests in the form of betrayal. And it turns over into anger. Because nobody in our group understand what was going on or what was the reasons why this happened. Because we did not have any warning. So we weren't prepared. And the proof of that is the fact that we haven't had a NPO registered. We haven't had a bank account. We didn't even have the membership lists of who was paying, who was not paying, who was on the civil side, who was on the defense side. So there was a lot of things that we had to do very quickly to put in place. But the anger amongst my senior people was palpable. And the next day, I received a voice message from Gustav. And he said, I thought about it again. Okay, but listen now, 2 days ago, it was from above. This time, 2 days later, he thought again. That we can stay together as one group, but then I must get rid of Adrian. And he added that there is X amount of money more for you. And that was, to me, was unacceptable. And I told him that, listen, there's already, like we said in Afrikaans, vertrouwensbreuk between my senior personnel and him, Gustav. And that's where it all started. The next day we received letters saying, well, the vehicle of the defense must go back to them. They are the owners, although my people put down a deposit, paid in total 110,000 rand. That is a private person, one of my seniors who paid that. And the other half was paid by both defense members and civilian members. So actually, we have paid 3/4 of the vehicle, but they want it now back. And that's when they are starting breaking all these agreements that we have made and all the promises. They fired the ladies in the head office by means of a WhatsApp message. nobody was paid. After we have warned them about the implications and we will go to Labour Court about it, they did pay a part of mine and a part of Adrian's and nothing else. So this thing turned very quickly very ugly because we feel betrayed. And all the correspondence that we sent to them by email was countered by a counter demand. And it ended up where both Adrian and myself received notices that we will be retrenched. But a week later, we received a notice of a hearing that we must attend on Zoom. And our head of the judicial, our lawyers, what does you call that thing? But anyway, Advocate Murphy sent them a letter and say, no, you are breaking the agreement in part, but you are also not following your own rules. If you retrench them, you cannot a week later have a hearing to try and dismiss the people. They ignored that and they continued with this hearing on Zoom, which on advice of Advocate Murphy, we did not attend. And I and Adrian was fired by a youngster called Ernst van den Berg. And Ernst is the guy who did the IT for the Suidlanders. And eventually also did the books for Suidlanders. And at a stage he admits to me that he decides, it was before the time, he decides who gets what. And we continue, we send them letters. I got proof of that letters, and I said to him and Gustav that, listen, you got to stuck to the agreement that we have formed. Otherwise, we will have to take further measures. If you continue along this path, we have no other option than to go further. And that's when we realized that they are not going to do anything. They are not going to stand up to the promises and the agreements that has been formed. And all this actions and counter-actions has divided this group even further apart. And we have now reached the point where there's irreconcilable differences and we can never look eye to eye again. But I and some of my seniors sat down with Adrian and said, Adrian, you got to go back. Why do they want to get rid of you? And Gustav made a lot of videos in which he sort of insinuates that we are busy with unlawful activities, and he was trying to push the blame away from himself and everybody else and put it squarely on us, and even called Adrian by name as an agent of the state. And in fact, Adrian could sue him, or can, if he wants to. But the point is, they were pushing and pushing and pushing on the Adrian issue. Video after video was about that. He even put one video out about the Boerenmacht trials, which happened many, many years ago. And we are so far apart from that you can't even believe it. Because we are just normal oaks. We are normal ex-military oaks who see the problem in South Africa and who use our knowledge to make a plan and to prepare for what might happen in South Africa. And you know what? If nothing happens, nothing will happen. And then it was a nice and a good exercise. But we told Adrian, you now go back. You must think far, far, far. Even before we started the so-called defense lag. Before that. Because at a stage he was appointed to be the bookkeeper of Suidlanders. And one weekend he sat down and then he came upon a couple of files on a memory stick, as well as some files in a box, letters, minutes of meetings, that type of stuff. Even bank statements of the period 2016 until the end of 2020. And all of a sudden, when we start working through that stuff, we realize that there is a reason why they want to get rid of Adrian, because Adrian knows too much. It was so obvious what went wrong that it was unbelievable. So we spent a week with Advocate Murphy. We went through all the documents, also with forensic auditor, to look at this 2016 to 2020 statements and stuff. But what did happen is when they first picked up this, what's the right word for it, man?
Do you want to use Afrikaans?
Yeah, yes, my English is not so good. Let me have a slug of coffee.
Just while you're doing that, Col Wynand, there's a question here. Do you drink condensed milk in your coffee?
No, Scott, I'm not. I've said it in a few of my skid marks. I am a guy that just drinks my coffee with cremora, like Jans used to say, red and lekker. And yeah, that's how I am.
Going back to Wynand, sorry.
Yeah, there was a lot of discrepancies, that's the right word.
Right.
Discrepancies that we find immediately in this paperwork. And Adrian, when he first noticed it while he was appointed as their bookkeeper, he went first to another lady to check the books, and she agreed with him that there's a problem. Then he went to Gustav, and he gave this paperwork to Gustav, and he said, Gustav, you must resolve this problem. He said, there's big problems in the books. And Gustav asked him if he can keep the copy and so that he can take some necessary steps. And Adrian said, yes, it's fine. And as Gustav walked away, he turned around and asked Adrian, is this the only copy? Adrian said, yes. And that was the last word ever said about it. And Adrian then resigned. And we got his resignation letter, we got his appointment letter for that period of about 6 months where he was responsible for their books. But remember, a bookkeeper don't write the checks. The bookkeeper don't dish out the money. The bookkeeper don't do the transactions. It was done by somebody else. And when we put all this stuff together, which we found or determined from that documentation which was in our possession, that's when we went to Advocate Murphy. They drew up the case and they applied in the High Court of Kimberley for Anton Piller order. Now, Anton Piller is an order that
Wynand, can I just stop you there, because we'll get on to the Anton Piller order in a second. I just want to address, we got close to 500 people watching on YouTube, and when you take in the Loving Life stream, we've got well over 1,000 people watching right now, so it's a good audience we got tonight. And guys, if you haven't registered on lovinglifetv.com yet, please do. It's the most comprehensive, daily updated news on South Africa. Now, Col Wynand, I'm going to move across to you now. Is there something you'd like to add to what Wynand has said, or something you'd like to ask Wynand regarding his opening comments?
Oh, look, I did a skidmark. It was Afrikaans briekmerk about the split between Suidland siviel en Suidland burgerlike beskerming. And in that in that skid mark, I discussed stuff, and you must now just understand where I come from. I've got zero internal knowledge of what happened. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to what Wynand is telling and saying, and I think to myself, there's a lot of information in what he is saying now that could have made me be much more brutal in that brickmark that I did. Because the reality is that I did the brickmark based on observations of an independent third-party guy that just looks at what is in the public domain. And I made some statements, and one thing that I did is I did a spreadsheet estimate of the money involved, and I extrapolated it over a 10-year period. And it is a hell of an amount. Now, that estimate that I did, or guesstimate, or what you want to call it, excludes any gifts, any donations, any sponsorships, none of that. My skid mark was just around the estimate of the money involved for membership fees. And I'm not going to say it here on a public forum. The messages that I got, and the emails that I got, and the WhatsApps that I got from people, obviously on the Suidland side, on the Gustav side. And some of them were brutally and scathing, and you cannot believe the things that they said to me. And me, I'm a weird guy. Where the guys were making that stupid comments on the videos, I just said, "Fully no better," and that's all, because there's one thing that I will never do, and that is get into a debate on YouTube comments, because it is a waste of time and a waste of effort, and it's a hell of a bloody problem to track in any case. So I'm listening to what Wynand is saying here. And, for me, being a business guy, and I'm actually a very good business analyst. And I listen to what he's saying, and it confirms what I said in that skid mark. For me, as an observer, and from the limited knowledge that I have got absolutely zero doubt in Wynand's integrity. That is important. No doubt in his integrity. And I have a good idea of Hugh's life and how he views things because of his history. But the other guy is a major problem. He was a major problem for me, and I'm going to be honest about it. Some of my followers send me links to the stuff that Gustav was publishing. And I listened to about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I switch away from it, because when a person tells me, God told me, my first reaction, and I've mentioned it many times, hey, give me that number, I also want to make a call. That's it. And then when people come and they say, yeah, they've been appointed as watchers and all that shit, excuse my French, I immediately say to the guy, hey, let me see your letter of appointment. And in my skid mark, I made a statement in which I said, this guy sounds to me like a cult preacher. And you don't want to know how many people jumped on my back about that. And you guys must understand, I can't be open and honest like I am on skid marks, because out of respect for Scott and the respect for Wynand and the respect for the audience, I'm not going to use my normal sailor language. But it was things like that that deeply disturbed me. And taking into consideration what I know about Wynand and my absolute, I'm convinced that there is zero finger to point at his integrity. It was a rough thing for me to see what he is going through, because I'm a guy that lives in my mind, and I've got a vivid imagination, and I write stories, and all things like that, and I put myself in his shoes, and I can imagine the shock, the feelings of betrayal, desperation, and in a large way, his feeling of impotence. The shit is happening around him, and he can do nothing about it. He can't control it. He don't know where the hell it comes from. And I sent him a WhatsApp, and I said to him, Wynand, one thing, follow the money. I am 100% convinced the primary break here is about money. Nothing else. Forget the fancy stories of hotlines to heaven and all that stories. Forget it. Money.
Yeah.
And what is to me, in that last video that I watched, I don't know if it's his last video, but the video that I watched after the break that Gustav made, it became clear to me that Gustav was gunning for Adrian. And I said to myself, fuck it, it's the money.
Now, thanks, Colin. I'm going to pass back to Wynand. Wynand, you might want to respond to what Colin has just said, but I think this issue is definitely to do with the funding and or the money that the organization has received, in particular through memberships. That must amount to millions of rands over the period of time. And do you want to talk about that and the Anton Pillar High Court order? Over to you.
Yeah. No, I must tell you, membership fees was something that became active actually very late in the existence of the Suidlanders. When I became involved in, or just before I became involved in 2016, 2017 book year, there is a meeting, what's it with me tonight with my English? Minutes of a meeting. And in that minutes, it was stated, and that minutes was signed by the management at that stage. There was 1,600 paying members, which brought them to a total of about 668,000 that comes from membership fees. I'm not talking about donations, because there is also a story around the donations, especially that from abroad. But then in the group year, when I became involved in November of 2018, and I actively started to form the defense leg in 2019 and 2020. The membership numbers went up by 250%.
Wow. And
it ended with an income of 4.3 million membership fees. They stated. But you know what? they say that I have built my organization on their back. They have pulled me out of misery to give me a job. I've earned more money when I was solely writing my books, attending weekend after weekend functions and selling my books. I made much more money than I ever made from the Suidlanders or Suidland Defence. By the time in 2019, I think it was around about June, July, I started receiving a sort of a salary which was 7,000 rand a month. And at that stage, some of their children was receiving 15,000 rand a month. There was a school kid that received 12,000 rand a month in 2020. So what happened after 2020? Because we don't have any statements, bank statements, or any records after 2020. Because they denied us access to the bank, they denied us access to the books, everything. We have no idea how much money came in afterwards and how the paying memberships have grown in 2021 and 2022 up to now. And that was our problem. We wanted to have access to that information so that we can determine, okay, how many of these people, of this 250% growth that you have shown in memberships, how many of those people is there because of me, my involvement, the speeches every day that I'm making or my videos? How many people is involved? Is it then justified to say, okay, your side don't actually earn a lot of money, so you are not justified on this stuff? If we had the insight in the books, in the files and everything, then we would have seen exactly what is owed to us. Now, the biggest mistake I made in this whole episode was I did not want to become a director of the Suidland Holdings Company. And the reason I said was straightforward. I said to them, guys, you do that job. I want to focus on what I must do, on how we can save as many people as possible when anarchy breaks out in South Africa. When they say, well, what about the bank? I said again, I don't want to serve on it, but you must appoint one of my members, which they did not do. And that was a mistake from my side, because then I got I got fired by the IT guy, just like that. Stupid, but anyway, it happened. Point is, the only way for us to find out what happened after 2020 with the membership growth and with the income, we had to go for Anton Piller. And the only way to do it was to get every piece of relevant information, combine it as a document with enough proof to just remember, Anton Piller is not an order that is being given easily. I think it was only 4 or 5 times that the High Court in Kimberley issued a Anton Piller in the history of law in South Africa.
Wynand, just interrupt for a second for people watching. An Anton Piller order basically gives the recipient, in this case Wynand, unfettered access to all the Suidlanders' documentation, bank records, everything. Back to you.
Yes, it does. But then you must prove in court, and Advocate Murphy was there in the court on the 14th of June for a whole day on that Wednesday, and he presented the case to the judge, and the judge must be uh, you must, I almost say you must convict the judge. My English is not good tonight. It's because I was.
You're excited.
Anyway, you must convince the judge that there is already fraud. You must convince the judge that there is already irregularities.
Mm.
And looking through that affidavits, the judge could see for himself what has happened inside the company. A couple of days ago, there was a message going around in the Cape between the Suidlanders, and the message said, he hasn't been found guilty. No, because he wasn't right. But the fact that the judge gave us the Anton Pillar is enough proof that corruption and bribery and that type of stuff has already happened. But they must just realize that everybody now in South Africa who is interested in our type of stuff will know that the Anton Pillar was issued. So any law enforcement agency can walk into the High Court in Kimberley and obtain those documents and build a case. So the chances that they are going to end up in court are very good. But that won't be from our side, because we have received the information we want. And I cannot divulge anything tonight because we are still working through everything. The point is, we have done what we have to do. We have shown to the world and we have shown to all Suidlanders that yes, your leader is corrupt. There was mistakes. And you know what? People have warned me many, many times. Over the past 2.5 years, 3 years, they have warned me, saying, Wynand, you must be wide awake, you must be careful. And I didn't want to listen because I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe that this is the one case where I will go through for our people, the survival of our people, something that I very strongly believed in. And betrayal was the last thing that I expected. It wasn't on my mind. So when it came, it was a bigger shock than being captured in Cabinda, which was a traumatic experience, which resulted in 2.5 years imprisonment. This action that I've experienced now, that Gustav did to me, was more traumatic than my being taken a prisoner of war in Angola. And you know what? After that, it has happened with a couple of business partners I was in with. And at a stage I told my wife, Frances, listen, from now on, I'm going to write books and I'm selling books to people. And he can buy it if he wants it. If he don't want it, you don't have to buy it. Because in every work that you are doing, and you deliver a service, you will find somebody who is unhappy with the service or who's unhappy with this or unhappy with that. I built a house for a guy at one stage. He gave me a photo. He wanted his stairs changed because the architect plans shows cement stairs inside his house. He wanted to be a steel with wood stairs. I built it for him. When the last payment was due, he said to me, it's not built according to the specifications of the architect, so I'm not going to pay you. And as I walk away, he said to me, you are a strong person, you will stand up again. And I said to Frances, that day I said to Frances, I will not allow another man in his life to walk over me like they did, like everybody else did. And now Gustav, in whom I've had the full confidence, did exactly the same, for the wrong reasons. He says he knows nothing about our plans and stuff. He's lying. And I can prove that he is lying because he was present at every presentation that we ever did on the planning of the Suidland defense, which has now become the Suidland civil protection. But in retrospect, I'm glad it happened, because now I can clean out the unwanted elements in the organization. I can disassociate with each and every one that I don't like, who don't see the future of our people as a priority. I don't have to calm a guy or give a lot of attention to a person who is not serious about our cause and the mission where we have to go and where we must go. And I'm using my life experiences, everything that has happened in my life, I'm using that as a guideline to guide me through the processes to enable us to have a workable plan and an optimal survival opportunity for our people. We must be objective. I cannot let myself be guided by dreams. I dream about a beautiful girl every night. Haven't seen them. Okay? But that's not the point. I cannot plan on dreams. I cannot plan on visions. I cannot plan on what has been written by somebody else many, many years ago. And I don't say the person is wrong. All I say is I cannot do my planning like that. That's why I brought together a lot of senior personnel, and we have done a strategic appreciation, and I think I did explain it on a previous conversation that we had, Scott. But we did the appreciation, and that appreciation must guide us. We cannot deviate from that. We got a structure based on a military type of structure. And I always refer back to the Kenya lager, where they have also done exactly the same emergency planning based on military rules, military discipline, military structures. And that was in 1965, in the first election of the Congo. They expected problems to arise. And retired brigadier ran the whole process. If you don't do that, if you don't have a strict line of command, if you don't have discipline, you will not survive. We cannot forget the importance of proper planning. That's what we did. And I think to a certain stage, we have developed too quickly, too far ahead of the normal Suidlander mission, which is going into a safe place and basically stays there for eternity. I say we need to have a plan after we have become safe. We cannot live in the desert forever, or where else you want to go. But we have to look at the size of the area. We have to look at how can we produce enough food for 3 million internally displaced people. How can we provide power to the farmers who must continue irrigation next to the river? That is things that must be physically planned and put into place. And they don't help you lie to the people and say, we got this truckloads of medicine and truckloads of foods which does not exist. But I can tell you that we got 180 tons of grain in silos which is being cycled. We got almost 1,000 cattle. But on the defense side, in 2 years' time, while the Suidlanders is now on the ball already for 20 years, but what have they done? What are they going to do now? That is different. We have always said between ourselves, the senior group, let them continue as they are. We will incorporate logistical support to them from our side, because they don't understand the concept of logistics, they don't understand the concept of planning logistics, nothing. But without telling them, because they will feel bad about it, now telling them we have planned that the logistics that we will run within 7 days after we have get together in our main assembly area, we will have to supply them. We will have to supply all people who need food. What you think is going to happen, for example, with the colored population in Uppington if they don't have food? We have to think about that. We have to plan about it. Medical stuff, little shoebox full of medicines is not going to save the nation. How are we going to get medical supplies, fuel supplies in from Europe or elsewhere, and how are we going to pay for it? That is the things that must be planned. It must be in place. You cannot say one day or when it happens, we go to that place, we took all the grain that is in that silo, doesn't belong to us, but we're going to take it. You cannot do that. The farmers will shoot you. Why not negotiate, pull the farmers in, make them part of a national survival plan? It doesn't help if you want to box yourself into a little grouping. I'm not supposed to talk about the plan tonight. The point is, you can mark my words, in 10 years from now, nothing would have happened in the Suidlanders. No progress. Nothing. But what have we done in the past couple of weeks since the split up? We have formed civilian strong points throughout the country. We have started with fire teams to assist farmers. We have already started with medical training, trauma services supplied to members. It's there. It's happening. But while this is happening, we are being attacked by people. My family are being attacked by some people. So, if I'm a little bit worked up, Scott, it's just about that.
Yeah.
People.
Scott, let me come in here.
Wynand, before you do, Colleen, I just want to respond to one of the comments in the side chat. Shah has said, serious allegations have been made. I've heard this side, and in order to make an informed decision, I'd like to hear what the founder of Suidlanders, Gustav Muller, have to say. Now, Shah, what I did was I actually, a couple of days ago, invited Simon Roche to come and join this live stream, and he basically sent me an audio clip that I played right at the start of this live stream, where he basically declined that opportunity for the right to reply. Now, Colleen, you wanted to come in here. Over to you.
Yes, I think that we need to give Wynand a little bit of a breather. The guy has been under a morsel lot of stress, and I can very well imagine it. And I have shared stuff with other people. I went through a major betrayal in 2014, and at this point in time, my position with reference to what Wynand is doing is I'm basically the devil's advocate. And I knock on his shoulder and say, what about this? What about that? And I listened now when he explained the structure of his command structures and all of that. And in one of my skid marks, I spoke about that specifically. The feedback I get from young people is that they feel not part of the plan of the process. They understand the critical necessity of being prepared. That they understand. But you must understand another thing. For a guy younger than the age of 40, basically, in South Africa, to them, military ranks and military discipline and things like that is totally foreign. They have got no clue about that. And they, and now I'm going to clarify this. If I say they, I'm talking about the people that give me feedback on the channel, and I can clearly hear from what they say and so forth that they are youngsters. They feel that the Omana is just expecting them to come along in the slipstream. And I've said to many of them, guys, you must just understand, when the shit hits the fan, you really want a guy in front there that actually knows the front end from the rear end of a gun. But you must also understand that the necessity of discipline can never be negated. There's no condition under which you can undervalue or underestimate the importance of discipline when the shit hits the fan. Because it is the guys that are going to run into the streets like scared fucking rabbits. They are going to get killed. And it's the guys that most probably going to sit in his house, make sure everything is under control. He's got his water, he's got his emergency kit there and all of that. And he's just guarding his front door or guarding his front fence or something like that. And the thing that in my initial, I'm not going to say investigation, it wasn't an investigation, just looking over the things and so forth. And about 2 years ago, I had a major fight with the Suidlanders guy on Facebook, and it ended up in him blocking me and me telling him to, you know what I told him. And the fact is that, and I will admit, I asked Wynand explicitly about it about 2 days ago. And I said to him, Wynand, this, in Afrikaans, all my skid marks that I did on this topic are talking about laat spat. This grab and go guys. And I said to him, from the feedback that I see, a hell of a lot of people has got a major problem with that grab and go thing. Boy, take me, for instance, personally. I sit here in the Lowveld on my little farm. There's no bloody way that I'm going to grab a bloody kit bag and a fucking tent and shit off to Uppington. How am I going to live there? How am I going to survive there? What am I going to do there when I reach there? And say, for instance, somebody cleans the fan and cleans the floor and cleans the ceilings and cleans by some miracle, cleans the windows. What am I going to come back to? And I asked him explicitly, are you changing your philosophy from grabbing and going to Murlampur to looking at decentralized, localized grab and go points? Something for me here in my area. Yeah, close. And he said to me, yes. And I just left it at that.
Okay, now, Colin.
My personal feeling is that the Suidlanders thing is that, and I've asked it, and you've got a large audience tonight, and I want people to rack their brains and just think a little bit. In the late 60s, middle 70s, there was a guy in Pretoria by the name of Dr. Ducey. And for the hell of me, I can't remember how to spell his surname properly. And I rented a building from him in which I had a steakhouse. But that guy was talking about the Suidlanders at that stage already. And he was talking about jumping to the West Coast. But the thing that made my hair flew up straight, and you must understand, those years I had a hell of a mane of hair, was when I realized that his concept is based on some belief that they are the chosen people. And when I heard the first message from Gustav Miller, I heard that sect preaching, and I thought to myself, just, is this not juicy shit? And there I am today. I still don't have an answer on that one, but I must just say that I think that we should give Wynand some breathing space and maybe time to go and sit there under his own tree. Ja, Arabo is a tree with ook an aerial and a connection somewhere nie. Net 'n gewone boom there somewhere and gather his wits because they've rattled him. And he actually deserves just a little bit of quiet time to settle down and start thinking about all these things that happened around him. And then try and make a decision to see. And my message to Wynand tonight is you guys better pay special attention to the younger generation. They feel left out. They feel like passengers on your train. And in the end, we're going to need every hand on deck. My boys, I'd say to them, Lieutenant General, Brigadier, Colonel, what? It means nothing to them. Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Colleen, I'm going to just interrupt here. Now there's a really interesting point that Colleen brought up there, Wynand, and I just want you to discuss that, and also how the SBB will adapt to make space for disillusioned Suidlanders. And just added to that, Colleen mentioned the concern he has about having one central spot near Uppington where everybody gathers. And he says, why don't you have like a regional spot or even a community spot for people involved in your SBB? Over to you.
Okay, yeah, it is very simple. Uppington is not the assembly area. It's quite far from here. The fact that I'm in Uppington is because Uppington proves to be the most strategic town in the world area that we are talking about. Uppington, secondly Douglas, and thirdly the R. Because of the electricity networks that's all going through the R. That's the three main important areas. So our main assembly area is somewhere in the middle of all that. The point is that we got a task. To do that task, we, as the SBB guys, must get together to perform our task. If we don't succeed in the task, nobody in South Africa will eventually survive. However, if we do succeed in our task, the battle is won. Now, if you go and look at our website, suidlandbb.co.za, you will see everything is being discussed there. But when you join up, you will see there's two groupings where you can join. With the protection guys, beskerming, or then with burgerlikers, which means civilians. Now the civilians are the people that came over from the Suidlanders to us, and there's a huge number that has already come over, and those guys are being placed in strong points, as we call it, so that we can still use them to assist in certain things. If there is a farming group, say in a area, let's say north of Pretoria, there, say Bella area, there's a group of farmers who got themselves pretty well organized, and they want to become part of us. We will go out and assist them in their planning to see that everything is in place, if it is workable or if it is not workable. They must have certain things which we require. They must be in radio communication with us. There must be aircraft fuel. We can fly into Kazabek people. We can fly in foodstuffs, medical stuffs, whatever they might need. So we don't say to all people, just leave. If you have a good enough strong point, but we must be able to support you in some or other way, then we can take you under our wing and we will advise you and help you with your planning, etc., etc. But the first priority remains the protection part. The protection part must do the task of stabilizing the stabilization plan which they must execute. So if those guys now all want to stay at home, then we can never do it. Then it cannot work. That's why I've always said to the people who joined the Suidland Defence Lag those days, they must be willing to withdraw, to come to the main assemble area, because we need that people for a certain tasking. But now we have created the strong points which can be anywhere, but we must be able to support it, we must be able to strengthen it, we must be able, in the case where finally they cannot get out, we can go and take them out. So it becomes much larger. There's certain, Colleen, now you can wait. I told you not to talk about policies tonight, but you now started, so I'm going to fuck you up. Ah, sorry. Colleen, sorry for that word.
Nee. Dis alles in die hart, Wynand. Ek persoonlik
But
voel net.
there's just one other point, Colleen, I want to answer you on, and that's about young people. We are currently about the division strength. So that's not a small grouping. More than 50% of our people are youngsters. But all the leader elements is former military trained people. In other words, form the platoon sergeant, platoon BEF, company BEF, battalion BEF, the RSMs, the company sergeant majors, as guys with experience. But under them is a lot of young people who have already slot in, and we will use them in combination with each other, some to give guidance, etc. And then once we have done what we have to do, it is where we reach the point where these guys will go through a very rapid training process. But we cannot do training before the time. Then we are in hot water. So no training before the time, only at a later stage. But okay, you can talk again.
Helene?
Okay. Wynand, my personal feeling at this point now in the discussion is I am willing to accept and concede that you know exactly what planning is needed when the shit hits the fan and how it will be managed and handled when that happens. That I've got no problem with. The thing that I personally feel that is a major issue among the population of South Africa is that people do not actually realize in what danger we are actually at this point, because they all of them, they feel that, yeah, okay, dit gaan nou shit met die government, but nie te bad nie, die krag is nou nie helemaal gone nie, dis daarom hier so terug, jy weet, ons het so nou en dan vir 'n uur of vir 2 ure af, en daai, all that, and they have this false sense, and I don't want to say security, but they've got this false sense of, yeah, it won't get as rough as that.
She'll be right.
But the problem that is why I'm glad that you are here, because you are the military expert. I am the guy that sits here and I read the signs of what is going on in the country. And I think very few people actually understand the issue that is happening between BRICS and the G7. They don't see the reality of that thing, because you're sitting in the BRICS side with two monsters, Russia and China. And those two guys, doesn't matter what they tell you in the press or what, I'm telling you now, when Putin and Xi sat there in Moscow for 5 hours in Putin's study, all alone, just the two of them, they were talking about taking on the G7. And they made their plans, and BRICS is the vehicle they're going to use. We here in South Africa sit in a situation that we have a chair at that BRICS table. But then I've asked the question on many forums. Nobody can actually tell me, why are we in BRICS? Because as a country, we're contributing basically nothing to that thing. And the people that are actually contributing is G7 Center. And I've said it, and guys nearly freaked out. South Africa is in BRICS because of the Cape Sea route, and that's all. That is basically the bottom line of it. Because as a country, and industrial and commercial and so forth, we're offering nothing. And then they mention the minerals, and I say, man, that minerals is on the ground, it's going to go nowhere. Go and look what's happening in the Congo. It's chaos and murder and death and violence like hell, but the minerals is going out. So don't come with a mineral story. The Cape Sea route is what ties Asia to South America, and it ties Asia to North America, and it ties Asia to Europe. All the important markets for Asia. And then they talk about, yes, look what happens with the Suez Canal. And I said, China showed us how vulnerable that Suez Canal is. One container ship turned sideways and that thing was blocked.
Yeah.
And I still believe it was a planned thing. And then now you can see what happens in the Sudan. Why is that really that big balls up in Sudan? Because of that Russian naval base. That is the problem. And that is what's going to happen to us in South Africa. The fight is going to be between the West and BRICS for the Cape Sea route. And our problem is our population is living in this fantasy world. And we're going to get a lot of business in BRICS. We're going to get a lot of investments from BRICS. And they don't think about that. Now, the real problem lies, there's a deadline here. This August meeting of BRICS, that new entrants are going to be brought into BRICS, which is suddenly like that, going to make BRICS a monster. A monster. And the Americans, they are not going to allow the Cape Sea route under the control of BRICS. They will first try their utmost, and we can see it, they've done a lot of shit already, to try and disrupt this BRICS meeting. I don't think they're going to succeed, because the forces against that, it's just too big and too strong. That Putin warrant was bullshit. But the fact of the matter is, my personal belief is that just like that, Central South Africa can find itself in the middle of a hot war between Russia and China on the one side, and America and NATO on the other side.
Right.
And the people don't see it. They don't see it.
Okay, Colleen.
Yeah.
Colleen.
They want to see it. So what Wynand is talking about preparations can be overnight your only chance on survival.
Yeah. Now, Colleen, I saw that Wynand raised his hand a few times. Wynand, over to you. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, you know, Scott, the people start laughing when Lesotho made noises by December of last year, when they said they are reinvestigating their land claims. And a couple of weeks ago, they actually discussed their land claims in Parliament. And the newspapers and the media sort of laugh it off as unimportant. I went and looked at their land claims. I actually went to the resolutions of 1962 of the United Nations. Now, 1961, South Africa became a republic. So there was an immediate fear that South Africa was going to incorporate Lesotho, Swaziland, and perhaps Bechuanaland or then Botswana into South Africa, which we didn't do. But the 1962 resolution gives Britain the mandate to protect Lesotho and Swaziland and Botswana against any South African aggression. It also acknowledged the land claims, which from Lesotho side is the whole of the Free State, northern part of the Eastern Cape, the southern part of Natal, and parts of Mpumalanga. If you look at the land claims of Swaziland, northern part of Natal, parts of Mpumalanga, and all of a sudden the land claims become one. And the only part of Natal that's left open is the Zulu Kingdom. Nothing else. Now, Botswana has in a statement some years ago, I got the document, they said that they consider all people living in Botswana as Botswana members of Botswana. Now, if we draw a line around Botswana as the areas it was laid up, then we will see that this whole issue is joining. But the United States, by building their military base in Botswana, has taken over the mandate from the Brits. But the Brits and the Americans are joined in the G7 or in this conflict against BRICS or against Russia at this stage. So think for yourself, at the present moment, Russia will probably be able to occupy False Bay, Simonstown, first of all. They can control everything down to Antarctica with the missiles, which is the best in the world. And from where will the United States then launch their stuff? It will come from Botswana. British troops will come from Lesotho. There are two British bases in Lesotho. They got more attack helicopters available in Lesotho than we got in our World Defence Force that is serviceable. So we are actually in a very tight spot here in the middle. If this is being exercised. Now think for yourself, if South Africa goes into a total lawless state, the government can't govern anymore, and we are now in violence and we are in anarchy, there's no communications and everything broke down. Lesotho can be in Bloemfontein within 2 hours. The Lesotho army can be there within 2 hours. We don't see that. We don't think about it. Now, on the other hand, within this chaos, we find all of a sudden that Zimbabwe asked the African Union for protection of his his members that is living in South Africa, for example, because there will be a lot of xenophobia. And we must think why the red group visited Zimbabwe in a military plane a year or 2 years ago. Must keep that in mind. What has happened there? So they request assistance from the African Union, and they authorize the African Union stabilization force to come into South Africa to stabilize the situation. Now you're sitting on the one side, they come in, they will use two countries, Zimbabwe, and they will use Angola. And Angola will run straight through Namibia and come right out at our back here at Uppington. And from the northern part, from Zimbabwe into the northern Transvaal, and you're sitting with the Americans in Botswana, with the Botswana Defence Force, and we are sitting with the Lesotho Army with the support of the British on that side. Where does it leave us? Now, we don't say that's what's going to happen, but it's our duty to look at all these different scenarios so that we can appropriately prepare for what happened or what can happen. It is emergency plan upon an emergency plan. There's a plan A, B, C, D. And on each of that, you must also have alternatives. And we have to look at it, because who else is looking at it? Who else is preparing our people?
Just a second. Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have moderators in the chat on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a guy stirring a lot of shit there.
What's his name?
Let me just find out from someone that sent it to me.
Okay, just
because
mods, if you can just keep an eye on.
That's that pet Nazi of mine.
Ah.
Pet Nazi of mine.
Okay. What is he saying? Just give me a outline.
Well, he said, die generaal moet eers sy geld loop haal by die Engelse onderwyseres en dan by Gustav.
Okay. All right, guys, if you can just keep an eye on that.
Du Toit. His surname is Du Toit.
Okay.
His surname is also Du Toit.
All right. Dries Du Toit. There we go. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, the mods. Look, I'm just mods. Keep an eye on Dries. Back to you, Wynand.
Yeah, Guylaine, is she beautiful?
Ah, yes.
The teacher they are talking about.
Is he what? Is he beautiful?
The teacher they are talking about, the English teacher.
Oh, your English teacher. Yeah, I get any.
She didn't do a very good job because my English is not what it should be.
Now, guys,
anyway,
I'm going to get us back onto the topic. Now, Colaine, just recently you brought out a video about a potential Maidan happening in South Africa. And it was a really, really good skid mark. Now, I know that Wynand has similar concerns about the same thing. Just give your perspectives on this, Colaine, then we'll get them from Wynand.
Look, as I said in my earlier talk, we're sitting with this problem that BRICS on the one hand and the G7 on the other hand, and I explained how I see this thing can go tits up, and Wynand explained more detail around the possible land claims of Lesotho and Swaziland and all of that things. But I want you to consider one thing, that the West is seeing BRICS as a major opponent, because BRICS can finally absolutely destroy the dollar. And there was something very important that the media didn't pick up on it, nobody picked up on it. About 2 months ago, the new president of the BRICS Development Bank issued a statement, and it was a very short statement. And he said in that statement that if a country that wants to become a member of BRICS or that is a member of BRICS should default on the IMF or the World Bank, it will not count against them at the BRICS Development Bank. And if you read that critically and think about it, he's actually telling future and present members of BRICS, default on your loans to the West. That's actually what he's saying. And if that happens, the dollar is going to be rubbish. And the Americans, there are people in America that is very aware of it. And they now are in a position that their actual survival is on the table. And what is the fastest way for them to get South Africa out of BRICS? Because if a country is broken, basically broken out of BRICS, it will make a lot of other potential BRICS members very nervous. And what is the quickest way to get South Africa out of BRICS? Balkanizing South Africa. Because which piece is going to be the member of the BRICS? Wynand?
Yeah. The statement made by the ambassador of the United States about the Lady R in Simonstown Harbor that loaded weapons for Russia. They know it is rubbish. We know it's rubbish. We don't have anything to offer Russia. But there was a point in. And now we must go back to Colane's earlier statement about Sudan, what happened in Sudan. If you don't listen to the United States, they will find a way to force you. What did Russia do? Russia said, right, they've written off all the debts of the African countries, while the United States threatens them with money. Now, the other way to do it is to create a Maidan revolution or a color revolution. So they just have to get somebody into power in South Africa who is pro-American and not pro-Russian. The current government, like the rest of Africa, is pro-Russia. So we can expect that large sums of money will enter South Africa through a channel, and I'm not going to say anything more about that, but through a channel to reach the people who is supposed to execute the Maidan Revolution in South Africa. And don't be surprised if it is the ISIS similar Boko Haram groupings in Natal who can start this revolution. But the money must get in first. So we are sitting with a threat. There's a lot of ways that the United States can play this thing to try and change the course of South Africa, or to put South Africa on the side of the United States. And just talk about the DA, they are on the side of the United States because they don't see further about the problems that we are having. But South Africa, because they stick with Russia. And there's another reason why Ramaphosa got on his plane and flew to Ukraine first, is to show the United States, listen, we are actually neutral, and we also like Ukraine. That's why they were in Ukraine. There was a huge show about the Ukraine visit. Very little about the fact that they also talked to Putin. That hasn't actually reached the news. So Ramaphosa is trying to rectify some of his actions, but they are not going to succeed. So we are facing a possible Maidan revolution or a possible hot war in South Africa, that's up and above the violence and anarchy that can break out in South Africa because Eskom goes down, or something like that. But it can also be this actions that is pushing us over into the state of anarchy. There's so many threats. And I can tell you, 90% of people that I know don't realize 5% of what we are talking about tonight.
You know what I find, sorry, you know what I find really interesting, Wynand, is that both of you guys come from very different walks of life, and yet you're in total synchronicity when it comes to this issue. You both see what could happen. And when you consider what a dilapidated state the South African Defence Force is in, you know, Swaziland could take over South Africa. It's that bad. Colleen, I saw you raising your finger. What do you want to say?
Yes. I just want to connect onto what Wynand is saying about the it seems to me his feeling is that the United States will start a color revolution Maidan type of story with the use of ISIS and Al-Qaeda elements that is already in KwaZulu. My personal feeling is, and I did a skid mark on it, and I think the title of the skid mark was about the sausage generation was bred for a purpose. What you guys must understand, and this is where I am, is that the most important piece of South Africa strategically, the most important piece, is the Cape area around Simonstown and all that. The actual Cape Point, that area there, is the most important one. And you must now just think for a moment at what is happening in Cape Town currently. Look at that vast conglomeration of squatters around Cape Town. Cape Town is surrounded by squatters. And there are, well, I'm going to say millions, but there's a lot of people that's going to say, look, it's too much. I've heard the story the other night in a discussion that I had in a group, and one of the black guys said to me, their estimates is that there is about 30 million illegal immigrants in South Africa. Wow. 30 million. Think about that. Okay, so Cape Town, the strategic importance for the Cape Sea route is surrounded by squatters, of which a vast majority is unemployed. A vast majority is unemployed. And they've got a peculiar setup there in the Cape, and that is that squatters is not only made up of South Africans. There's a lot of foreign squatters there. Now, to start a Maidan in Pakistan or to start a Maidan in Iran, a color revolution in those areas, costs the CIA a shitload of money, because they have to bribe and pay intelligent people that through the NGO organs can mobilize a percentage of the population. In Cape Town, they're going to roll up there with a few buckies full of Kentucky and a load of T-shirts, and that masses are into the streets. Just like that. Same in Durban, same in Joburg, same story. It's going to cost them actually peanuts to flash the civil violence and riots, and that is it, because that's all they want. They want that instability. And our sausage generation, unfortunately, and I said it in another black group that I was, for me, and I discussed it in one of my skid marks, for me, the biggest tragedy is that this Sasa generation was divorced from actual black culture. Because the true patriotic black people of South Africa will not tolerate that shit. But they are defenseless. That Sasa generation was bred for this. And they are millions. 17 or 18 million is one of the numbers that I got. So to destabilize South Africa is going to be a cheap thing. As I said, a few buckies of Kentucky and t-shirts, and there they go. And so, yeah, I can understand Wynand's view about ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but that is his view because he's a military guy. He sees it from a military, practical, executionable thing. I see it from a civil side. And we've seen how many times that these protests gets into riots like that.
July 2022. Was it 2021? Now, Wynand, do you want to just respond to what Colleen said?
About the Kentucky. Yeah, no. It can be a different ways. I've always thought it will start off with sort of xenophobic stuff that is initiated in the cities, etc. And I agree with Colleen that it can happen very quickly under the squatters and from that side, etc. But I cannot actually divulge more information at this stage because this is actually a thing that is busy happening, guys. But I don't want to say too much about it at this stage. Maybe in the future, if we still have internet, we can talk again. But yeah, it can be anything that they use to start this revolution off. I used the example of a possible ISIS situation because we know that there's a line of them from Laudium in Pretoria all along that route, basically down into KwaZulu-Natal. We're sitting with over 200 fully trained ISIS fighters in a place like Newcastle, another large number in Standerton. And the South Africans know about it. If I say South Africans, I'm talking about the intelligence services. They know about it, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't have the means to counter it. So with a little bit of, you know, if you take the attack on Cabo Delgado almost 2 years ago, a year ago, I can't even remember exactly when it happened. 12 of those group that did the attack was South Africans with South African passports. That's the interesting thing. And you know, when they take a break from the fighting in northern Mozambique, they come to South Africa. They come and relax in Natal. And then when they are ready to fight again, they are going back up north. So we are sitting with a huge problem there. And I don't want to pull ISIS into the normal conversations type of stuff. Not at this stage anyway. But yeah, there's a number of things, just another scenario that can play out. And we must be wide awake for every possible scenario that can play out. And that's why my group of senior former officers together, going through the planning sessions, looking at all the different threats that exist. How do we counter this? What do we do when that happens? And it must happen very quickly. It's not things that we can work out somewhere in the future. It's things that must be in place now. Because If we say we are going to do it, then we haven't done anything. And the time now, while we have some time, we must prepare as best. I say prepare, but under prepare, understand me well. Prepare but don't means necessarily water storage or food that you are getting together. When I say prepare, it is the planning that must get into place. The plans must be there. It must be well communicated to a certain level of the command structure. You can't convey everything down to the members, because then we are going to end up at the wrong place at this stage. So when I talk about preparation, I talk about all of this intelligence things that we must ontleed, pull apart, and see what can realistically play out, what can happen, what we can do to stop or block or not. So, and what must we try to prevent? And again, as I said to many people, if nothing happens, we have lost nothing. If this color revolution don't happen, if anarchy don't break out, if ESCOM don't fall, fine, great, fantastic, super. But if it does, the most important part, firstly, is to survive, to be able to survive. The second thing is, you must be able to protect yourself. You must organize yourself or be organized so that you can react in a coordinated way, and not everybody on his own way and manner. And just remember, and that's why it's very important to talk about patience. The younger generation feels that their patience is running out. Well, ours is also running out, except that maybe we can control it better. There's a specific group the other day, I saw that no people older than 40 years of age is allowed, because they will keep the people back. We must just remember, one stupid act can turn this country into a fireworks that we don't want at this stage, for which we are not prepared at this stage. Stupidity. If we wait on this survival scale until there's total chaos, then we got to move. Then we got every human right to protect ourselves, but not before that. Yeah, Scott, now I don't know anything more. Everything I know, I told you now.
Colleen?
I can understand that Wynand is reluctant to talk about the role that ISIS and Al-Qaeda can play. And what our audience must understand, ISIS and Al-Qaeda is CIA creations.
Yes.
That is their pets. That is what they use right across the globe.
And can I just say, Colleen, can I just say that the Central Intelligence Agency use spies, and they put them in places where you think that they're the good guys, but often they're actually exactly the opposite. Back to you.
Yeah, I understand that, and I can see that. And the thing is this, there is so many things happening right in front of our eyes that the average citizens, even above average citizens, they just see it and they don't pay attention to it. Wynand made a very important statement when he said that there was a lot of press around Cyril's visit to Ukraine, but there was nothing of the visit in St. Petersburg. It was just that initial welcoming and a little bit of sitting around the chairs and posing for their photographs. Nothing else was reported. But I have to add to that the SPIF 2023 was going in St. Petersburg at the same time. And the Russians made a decision not to accredit any journalists from any unfriendly nation. So no Western journalists got accreditation for St. Petersburg. So there was no Western journalists there to report on what was happening between Putin and that African delegation. And another thing that you guys must really take into consideration is the Russians specifically made a point of advertising that delegation as an African delegation, not a BRICS delegation, an African delegation. And I am of the opinion that Putin had a plan, and he showed some of his hand in St. Petersburg. The first nuke that he threw was when he published that draft agreement that was reached in Istanbul.
Yeah.
Now the question is, why did he do it? The thing is this, he did it to counter the West's narrative that he is the one that doesn't want to make peace. That is why he did that. The other thing, and that was more off the record and later on the record, was when Putin explained to that African delegation, listen, Russia will make sure that you get grain and that you get fertilizers. So relax about that. I'm not going to let the grain deal continue. So he countered the West again there, because the previous time the West used Africa as the leverage to keep the grain deal going. Now Putin has preempted that. And that is what comes back to my previous statement where I said when Putin and Xi was sitting in that study of his, they were talking about a lot of stuff that if we know about it, we'll most probably faint. There was one vital moment. Putin walked out of the Kremlin with Xi towards his car. He accompanied him to his car. And at the car, Xi and Putin embraced. And they were unaware that there was a hot mic. And Xi said to Putin, be strong, my friend. We are going to do something that hasn't been done in 100 years.
Wow.
What the hell was he referring to? I believe the wipeout of the Americans. That is my belief. Actually, not the Americans per se, the West. Those two guys are totally committed to break the back of the West once and for all. Because every country that is favorable towards Russia today, every one of those countries at some stage were victims of colonization or sanctions. I said to an American guy in a chat, I said to him, what you American citizens do not realize is in this, let's call it the BRICS world, how much the people hate Americans. Hatred that you guys cannot fathom. And the problem with you as the American public is you do not even understand why. So the problem that we are sitting with in South Africa, and that is what is making me very tense, is the BRICS meeting is in August. We are sitting end of June. The Americans are running out of time to derail that BRICS meeting. And Wynand will know, he was been in the war. When somebody panics, they fuck up. And unfortunately, South Africa as a country and the population in general is totally unaware of that ticking time bomb that is sitting under the table. And when these things are discussed, it is, for me, you guys must understand with my channel, guys, I get, let's call it hate mail. I get tons of
Ditto.
9 out of 10 of those violent responses is founded in fear. Because that guy, he cannot even, he cannot allow his brain to accept, yeah, here's a problem.
Now, Colaine.
If he accepts it, he's going to freak out.
Yeah. Colaine, I just want to wrap up the live stream shortly because we've been going for nearly 2 hours. And what I want to do is give Wynand the opportunity to talk about SBB and how people can join. I know I've put the website link under this video so people can go there as well. But we're talking about a very, very potentially serious situation. And I've always advocated for people to be involved in some community group, whether it be Neighborhood Watch or Burelition or now SBB, but do get involved in a group so that you're not alone. Because if and when the hordes come visiting, you will need to have support. Wynand, over to you to address this issue.
People must just remember, Scott, that we and I have very consequently stick to the plan, what we have decided. I haven't deviated. I had to adapt, but that's one of the principles. One must be able to adapt, and you must be a bit flexible. You must accommodate people in any possible way. What I'm trying to say is that we stay fixated on our cause of saving as many of our people as we can. And we will continue to do so. People can walk into our offices in Uppington, 26 Square Street. They can see that it's the rampbestuursentrum, that is disaster management centrum here in Uppington, which we are running at this stage. There's a lot of stuff that must come into play and come into place still, but we are developing. People can come and listen, see for themselves. If I'm there, then I will talk to them. If I got time, but I normally make an opening for people to talk if they want to find out more. And we will maintain our course and we will broaden our services and adapt to other people's needs as well. As we have discussed earlier with the civilian strong points that we are talking about. We will have to look after the elderly. We will have to look after a lot of stuff that we haven't given much attention to as yet, but that needs our attention, and we will do it. For me, it's about, at this stage of my life, trying to give my kids and their kids a future in South Africa. This is the most wonderful country in the world, even under the present circumstances. But it can be horrible if we are not capable of providing a better future in the future. I'm now double future. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, we must, if we as a nation, as a folk, we want to continue as Afrikaners, as Boeren, we will have to plan our survival. And then there will be a future. We have to go there through a very, very dark space ahead of us. For some of us, we don't even see the light on the other side of the tunnel. But for those who are involved and who have a plan, who is part of a plan, for them, there's a light in the tunnel. I always say to people, because there's many people that say, listen, the day when the things happen, we are with you. Where are you? If you are with me, not now, then you won't be with me then. Because how do I use you if I don't know about you? If you just rock up at the place, say, here I am, I'm not going to know what to use you for. That's why I'm asking people, if you feel like us, if our people's future is important to you, then become part of SBB. We are not radicals, we are not funny people, we are normal, former military people, people who was in other services, youngsters who is concerned about the future of the family. There's so many dividing factors in South Africa, so many dividing things that are being misused to divide us, like religion, language, and quite a couple of other things that is always popping up in an effort to divide our people. Now is not the time to divide. Now is the time to stand together. If there is any guy out there that sees himself as a leader, then they won't divide. They will rather start getting people together. And that is one of my big problems that I have, that Suidlanders has now caused this division. It's not the time to do that. We are at the end of the line, the end of the road in South Africa. So we should not criticize, not break down, but thank the Lord that there is people who is willing to sacrifice their day-to-day living in creating something to which we can cling on to, that can give us hope for a very dark time that lies ahead. I cannot do this alone. I can do this with the experience of my senior guys, but with the support of the nation, I can do it. Without that, we are all buggered. It's the time now to come together. Scott, yeah, that's my closing words.
Okay. Now, Colin, is there something you'd like to say in wrapping up?
Yes. And this might again upset a lot of people. And to be quite honest, I don't care. But somebody has to say it. And on skid marks and brickmerke, I have worked a long time to be just that voice that is willing to ask the difficult questions, that is willing to verbalize that many people think but are too afraid to say. And I'm going to refer to a skid mark that I did, and it was done a while ago, and the topic was basically white people or good people. And in my skid mark, I specifically discussed all these preparations that we are told to do and how to make provision for the day when things go really wrong. And I gave an example of the farmer staying on his farm, and he is making provision to secure his family and make sure his family is going to survive. And of course, there are some of those preparations that are being done that requires handwork and physical labor and so forth. And among those farm workers are people that look at what the farmer is doing. And he steps back tonight when he has, after the shift and the day is done and he's going back to his place of living. And he sits around his fire and he thinks about what happened for the day. And in his mind comes up the question, okay, we do all these things now for the farmer. And we understand why they're doing it. But what about us? What about us? And the gist of that skid mark was white people or good people. And today, I got involved in a debate on the BRICS group, and there's about 925 million blacks and 3 white guys there, and you can understand every time the other white guys don't even make a post, but me. And I ask the questions, and 2 guys asked me that we must take my question private out of the group because they don't want to clutter the group with it. And both of those guys said something to me that really gave me confirmation of this idea that I have. And the one guy says to me, "Jy weet, jy's 'n whitey. Maar jy's 'n whitey wat ek like. Jy dink soos 'n Suid-Afrikaner." And I mean, he talks Afrikaans to me, not English. And I've got an idea that the Zulu nation, and now I'm talking about the core Zulus, not the Sasa latched on second skin shit that has got no connection to culture. The core Zulu nation is potentially one of the best allies that the Afrikaner can have, for the simple reason the Zulus actually have something that they can lose as well. And I am a little bit uncomfortable with the focus. The focus is white, but then that focus group narrows white Afrikaners. And then I look at the numbers and I think to myself, well, the Afrikaners is roughly about 2.2 million in South Africa. We're looking at 65 million people. And now what that one black guy said to me, 30 million bloody undocumented foreigners here, that makes it about 100 million blacks against 2 million whites. That is shit odds, boys. That is not good odds. I don't care how well you're organized. I don't care how well you're prepared. I'm going to be gone in the first 24 hours. In the next 72 hours, you're gone too. And so by gone, that moment of gone is only separated by hours. It is not going to be an insurance. So maybe we need to look at the good people. And they are there. They are there. And they are just as concerned as us. I mean, a black guy is saying to me, you know what? You, during apartheid, you suffered exactly the same shit that we are suffering under the ANC. There's an elite group that controls everything. And I said, you know, You wouldn't realize it, but you are actually making my day. Because that is the truth. We are all of us are under attack. All of us are under threat. All of us. And if anybody, if any sane person thinks that if the CIA ignites a Maidan color revolution scenario in South Africa, if you think those Americans are going to care about you surviving, I'm going to say to you, look what they did to Libya. Look what they did to Syria. Look what they did to Yemen. Look what they did to Afghanistan. Look what they did to Iraq. Look what they are doing to Syria now. They killed 11 million people in the Middle East. They don't care about the population. They don't care about the population. They just want their goals met. So they'll wipe all of us out without blinking an eye. And then there is that stupid crowd in the Cape specifically that thinks the UK is going to be their saviors. The UK army cannot fill a small soccer stadium. They can do nothing for you. So the UK can do nothing for you. The Americans feel nothing for you. Think about that, because that is the reality of where we are sitting today. And as I said, and I don't want to be a fearmonger, because I'm an extremely optimistic guy. I'm a very optimistic guy. And maybe I'm a bit of a dreamer. Maybe I feel I pin too much hope on humanity. But in the end, it is humanity that's going to survive. I said to a guy that attacked me about this thing of good people, and I said to him, listen, you are missing the point. I'm not saying let your son marry his daughter. I'm not saying that you know, now I can't even say Rainbow Nation because it's got different meanings when you talk about a rainbow today. It's a balsa. I'm not saying mix, because it will never mix. The reality of life is that, point number one, races do differ. They do differ. But every race has got different cultural groupings. And amazingly enough, many of those cultural groupings are actually so close to one another, it is unbelievable. And that is something that I feel we must get away from that focus. Because Wynand mentioned early, right in the beginning, he talked about the colored community in Uppington. And he says, but they will also need to be looked after. So my question to the general is, well, isn't it a good plan to make those people that you want to, that you know must be looked after, make them part of the process of providing for that looking after moment? There's an old Afrikaans saying, vele hande maak ligte werk. And maybe we need to just do a little bit of a mind shift and look at the realism. Because I had a crazy interaction with my guy at the bank about 2 years ago, a black guy. And just as I sat down and he had to start, he looked at me and he said to me, yes, this is going to be a lengthy process. Let's go and have something to eat here at the Wimpy first. And we sat down there and we started talking, and he said to me, you know what? I don't think the white people understand that when me and my wife walk into a restaurant and it's full of white people, we don't feel comfortable there. Nobody is doing anything to us. We just don't feel comfortable. But you know, we are loud people. When we party, we are loud. And I said, yes, I can understand that, because my favorite chicken place in Nelspruit, me and my wife used to go before COVID. We used to go every Friday night. We go out for something to eat. And 9 out of 10 times we go to that chicken place. And we sit down there on a Friday evening. And we're the only white couple in that whole place. And it's been going for years. And we've never had issues there. Never, never, never. And I ask myself, are we not actually robbing ourselves of a logical allies? Because we are focused on this one thing. And now we've now taken the race and we've cut it off in a smaller grouping. En hy het 'n skitmaak aan Afrikaners as dwarstrekkers.
Colleen?
Hy het one on Afrikaners as kaksoekers and all of that. This is the important thing. And I want the general to take this to his command center and sit down with his command and say, boys, for a moment, let's think about this.
Okay, Colleen, I'm going to wrap that up there because, look, I think you made a really interesting point, and I'm going to give Wynand the opportunity just to respond to that specific point about
Yes.
being inclusive with other race groups. Colleen? Sorry, Wynand?
Yeah, what Colleen is saying is fine to a point. I know there's good people on all races, but we must go and look at similar situations that has happened, and we must look at what the United Nations say. Now, we don't, I don't give a hell of a lot about the United Nations, but there's certain rules that they have set when it comes to refugees and internal displaced persons. And one of those rules is if there is conflict between race groups, they are not supposed to be in the same place. Now, I've made my standpoint very clear. We will help whoever wants to do a similar survival plan, and we will help them to do it. And there's a lot of colored people that has contacted me on my YouTube channel, has spoken to me, and we are not shy of giving advice. There's one specific group that has contacted me and say, "Om Wynand, ons verstaan, ons kan nie aansluit by julle nie, maar ons wil ook iets vir ons mense begin." And that's well fine, we will help you. So that is the first answer that I'm giving. We are not unwilling to look at them, but at this present moment, we are a white cultural group, and I got another thing as well. You know, we have bent over backwards for 28 years in South Africa. We have given away, we have given everything to them to do their thing and do what they want, and they fucked up the country. We had the same amount of time since 1961 to build the country, and we did. We started with the Kunstefeeste, the arts festivals, KAKNK, and nothing is left of it today. If you look at the festivals there north of Pretoria, one of those Oppie festival, you can't go there anymore. The same with any Bos Kunstefeest there in Nelspruit. It was very nice, and we went there in the beginning. You know, if we then have different cultures, I think that different cultures must be able to organize their own things successfully, which did not happen anywhere where there's no arts festivals. There was one held in Bloemfontein Estate, which the government paid for, or the Free State government paid for, it was a total mishap. And all the money that was budgeted disappeared. So seeing it on that side, they are welcome to organize their own survival. And we will cooperate with them where it is necessary, and we will assist where it is necessary. But now it's about the survival of my people, which is in danger because we have given all these other people the freedoms which they have today, and allow ourselves open to anything. Because our leaders before 1994 did not think. They did not plan for us. Maybe the policy of partition, which was on the table at the stage, would have worked. Or maybe as balkanize the place, break it up in the federal states. Something. But who is going to do it? Nobody is going to do it. So the very first problem that we have is to survive. And that's what we are preparing for. We want to survive with our people. And I understand if Col says, well, there's a difference between 7 minutes and 70 minutes, for example, before you are skilled and before the rest are skilled. That's why location is so important. When you buy property, the people always will tell you location, location, location. If you look at survival, location, location, location. Look at the obstacles that there is natural, as well as what you can create to stay safe. Once you are safe, then we can talk. Then we can see how we can support each other. But first and utmost, we must be safe. So what I've actually said is, we do talk to other groupings. There is other groupings that is talking at present. But for the moment, if they can't contribute anything more, then out of our hands. Thanks, Scott. Ek en Colleen sal môre verder beklei.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And look, I'm pleased that we've actually sorted out what is going on at Suidlanders. What I'm going to suggest, Wynand, is that we have a follow-up live stream maybe in a few weeks' time when things have settled down and you know what's happening. I'll get Marlena to talk to you about that. And maybe in the future we can have another live stream where you and Col can debate this subject that Coleen's just raised, because I know of a political party in South Africa called Spectrum, where they actually have 4 different divisions within the political party, and one is for whites, one is for coloreds, one is for Africans, and it's the 4th one is for Indians. So you've got these 4 different groups which actually have like their own little area, but they're under one common leadership. So you have you have that option to look at. But I can see Wynand sort of saying no. But I'm just saying that maybe in the future we can have a bit of a discussion about that. All right, guys, take care and have a great evening.
Scott, I want just to say something.
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah, very quickly.
And this is going to be something that you can go and chew. Look at Russia. 190 ethnic groups. Let that sink in. 190 ethnic groups. Over 2,000 recognized cultural groups. And I spoke to a Russian guy about that specifically. And I said to him, how are you as a society, how are you coping with that? And he said, our government has 0 tolerance for discrimination. We are brought up like that. Our children are brought up like that, to respect every culture. He did not say race. ethnic, nothing. He said to respect every culture. And that makes us all Russians.
Right.
That's all
Okay.
I say.
Okay, fantastic. Colleen, Wynand, thank you for joining me tonight, and we still got well over 500 people watching here on YouTube, with well over 1,000 when you take in the Loving live stream. So we've had a really big audience, and I can tell you that there's a lot of admiration for you, Wynand, in the side chat. A lot of people who support you and what you're doing. I once again, just in closing, I want to let people know that below this video will be a link to the SBB website, where you can actually join if you want to, and you'll find out more information. And Wynand, do you have a contact email there as well if people want to email you?
Yes, just info@suidlandbb.co.za.
So it's just info at and then their domain name. So it's that simple. Alrighty. Colleen, thank you for joining us tonight. I mean, you've got a tremendous understanding of what's going on in the world today, and your skid marks are fascinating and great. Take care, guys. I'm going to wrap this up with one of our theme songs, and I think this is probably perfect, and it's called Hier Bly Ek Boer. And it's by one of our wonderful singers who's actually produced songs for Loving Life TV. Here it comes.
Meer as 61.000 van ons voorvaders het op die grens vir ons gesterwe, sodat ons vry kan wees. Die is my land, die is my reg, hier is ek boer. Van stof is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer, soos die grond op die aarde. Hier bly ek boer. Soos 'n diep in die nag sal die vyand kom, maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek boer. Soos 'n plaasdam in die somer wat vreugde bring. My oupa wat manetjie roek kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande. Hier was hy boer. My wortels lê diep in die grond geplant. Ek sien soos my pa los ek vir jou die land, en jy hoef nie te vrees nie. Hier sal jy boer. My land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek boer. Die sal kom. Sal kom, die leeu 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 sal kom.